This video introduces the ChaMP topo processing tools Create Wetted and Bankfull Polygons tool. As the name suggests, the workflow requires that this tool is run twice, once to produce the wetted polygon and a second time for the bankfull polygon. So I've worked through the workflow, importing my data and all those steps up to this point. And what I want to do is create the wetted and bankfull polygons, and I could do this by digitizing manually around my water's edge points and my bankfull points, but that's fairly slow and tedious, and this tool is going to help us do that a little quicker. So when I go ahead and choose that option on the menu, this panel, the stage slider, appears on the left hand side. Now this is one of those dockable windows, so you can left click on the title bar and pull it off and float it around, resize it, or put it on a second monitor. And then to redock it, just left click, hold down, and then drop on one of those blue arrows, and that will redock it. The window's designed and works best actually vertically on the left hand side like this. So the first input I have to choose for this tool is my detrended DEM. It's very important that this is the detrended DEM, not just a regular DEM. We're going to raise and lower the water level, and we need a detrended DEM so the water doesn't just flow out of the channel. Once I've chosen my detrended DEM, you'll see this histogram below gets populated. So this shows the frequency of pixels in the DEM that have different elevations. And so the higher the value on the right here, the more pixels there are with that actual elevation. The elevations, you'll notice, are arbitrary. They use the detrended DEM elevations, which do not use an absolute datum. The edge of water is roughly at about 100. These are meters, but as I said, it's an arbitrary datum. So once we've got the raster loaded, we can go ahead and move this slider up and down and actually flood different parts of the channel. I'll go ahead here and turn off the topper point so you can see what this is doing. So when I have the water level down low, it just shows you that there's just water in the pools, and as I flood I get more and more of the channel, and if I go all the way up to the top I can actually flood the entire site. So I could just move this around and try to find where I think my wetted polygon should be. But what I can do is I can load reference points into this tool. So I'm going to browse here and go into my projected feature data set. If you're working in unprojected coordinates, you'll go in there. And I'll choose my edge of water points. And once you do that, the tool's going to ask you, do you want to move the slider to make the best fit for these points? And in this case, I do. You can say no if you want, but I recommend you say yes. And this will move the slider to the average elevation of those points in the detrended DEM. So this is a really nice starting point. I'll zoom in here so you can see what's going on. So you'll see that the water level now really fits my points nicely. I can play with this a little bit if I want to move the water up or move the water down. And if I lose track of where I am and I want to revert to that original place, just browse out to those edge of water points again. It'll ask you again, say yes, and it'll move it back to that position. Okay, so that's your wetted polygon. To save it, click the Save Polygon tool down here, browse out to your geodatabase, and for the wetted polygon choose the first option, and for the bankfull polygon choose the second. It's exactly the same process that we're going to go through for those two tools. Okay, so I'm going to choose wetted polygon right now and click OK. This takes a few seconds, but it's actually turning that blue raster into a polygon. Now it's really important at this point that you pause and actually review the polygon. The tool does a pretty good job at some sites, but it is going to struggle at different sites. So what I'm looking for here is, does my polygon fit the edge of water points? Does my wetted polygon extend from the top to the bottom of my site? Now unless you had dry channels on the day of survey, you really want this polygon to extend all the way down the site. If you have narrow constrictions with steep gradients, such as a beaver dam or some other kind of narrowing of the channel, the detrending might have struggled at those locations, and you will get a truncated polygon that only extends, say, a fraction up your site. So in those situations, you're actually going to have to go into an edit session and edit this polygon and finish it by hand around your water's edge points. In my case here, it's actually done a rather nice job. My polygon extends all the way up and down the site, Notice the donuts in my polygon represent where where I have islands and areas that are exposed in the channel. Okay, so that's the wetted polygon. The Bankfull polygon is exactly the same process, but this time I'm going to use my Bankfull markers. So I'm going to turn off my polygon here, and I'll actually turn off the raster and turn off my edge of water. So there are my Bankfull markers. Now, we don't have a feature class that has just the Bankfull markers in it, so the reference points aren't going to help us this time. If you want to, you can save out those Bankfull markers by right-clicking on it, go Data, Export Data, save them to a feature class, and then you can use them in exactly the same way as your reference points for the slider. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn back on the DM and just flood the channel more until I get up to that Bankfull level. So let me just zoom in here. And I'm looking for the average elevation here, so I want to come up a bit more. Here you can see I've got a couple of points inside, maybe 1 point outside, so I'm happy with that. I choose my Save Polygon again, and this time I'm doing my Bankfull Polygon, so I choose that option, click OK. It's going to take a couple of seconds to turn that into a polygon, and there you go, it's added it to the map. Okay, so I'll actually just drag the wetted above that. Typically your wetted obviously will be slightly smaller than your Bankfull polygon. So that is the Create Wetted and Bankfull Polygons tool in the ChaMP Topo Processing Toolkit.